Well, good day, everybody. Pastor Tim Karstkatten here for the Pipeline Report with Zach Karstkatten. Be with me in just a moment. So glad you joined us here from Shreveport, Louisiana. It's 12 noon Central Time. Yeah, some of you watch live, some of you watch in replay. We thank you for that. We're calling the window of opportunity. That's really been our focus lately because we really feel like God is asking us to go through this window and to have us rise up in prayer to cover these key issues that are affecting our nation right now. As we head into the midterms, I think it's going to be a critical moment for us to do this. We'll talk first about Israel. So much going on. Prime Minister Netanyahu is now, as we speak, at Mar-a-Lago. He'll be talking to President Trump this morning. A lot of issues. We'll cover some of those here in a minute. We also have domestic issues, the fraud in Minnesota that is just exploding, and yet it needs much prayer, as well as the midterms that are coming up. We want to cover that just a little bit to prepare everybody as we head into 2026. This is our last Pipeline Report of 2025. Thanks for being with us. Let's get into the Pipeline Report today. Well, thanks for joining us. I pray you all had a great Christmas. We did. Weather's crazy around here in Louisiana. It was 85 the other day. It's 39 this morning. So I'm trying to take the day off a little bit, do some stuff around the house here. So I have my little studio here. So thank you for putting up with my hat, and I'm just not prepared that way. But we still feel what we had to release this revelation today about what's going on in Israel, especially with the Gaza issue and President Trump meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning. President Trump also met with Zelensky from Ukraine. I think it was yesterday on the Ukraine battle with Russia. Still no progress there. We just got to keep that in mind and pray for that as well. And of course, as we head into midterms, let's talk with Israel first. So many things going on. Just let me give you a little synopsis. I got a little interview here about what is going on there concerning this meeting, and I think this is a very important moment for us. So let me pull this up, and you can listen to the report, and that'll kind of will give us a talking point as we move forward.
I think that you're absolutely correct. This is one of the most fascinating times looking into the regional changes of the Middle East. The phase 2 of the agreement with Hamas is indeed on the table, but let's remember, Ran Gwili, a brave Israeli police officer, first one to jump and fight on October 7th, his body is still held by the terrorists in Gaza. And until all of the hostages, dead and alive, are back in Israel, Israel has no intention of proceeding into the second phase. We, as the Prime Minister has stated many times, and the Israeli public, has no intention of leaving anyone behind. So this is very crucial to say. And in addition, looking into the situation currently in Gaza, there is one clear reality. There is no future for Gaza as long as Hamas has the reins. And the reality now beyond the area that is controlled by Israel is that Hamas is in control. And as long as they are in control, no progress will be registered. You know, I have to share with you, over the past few days, the Israeli public has been exposed to an interview given by a former hostage, a released hostage, a young woman by the name of Romi Gonen. She accounted bravely many instances of sexual assault that she experienced under Hamas. The Israeli public will not forget this quickly, nor should the world.
It was
So where we're talking about here is critical, I think, for what's going on. Let's set up the Gaza scenario, and I know President Trump is touting his peace deal, and thank God that the hostages got released. We do give thanks for that. But if you remember the 20-point plan, we went over it a little bit here on Pipeline a while back. part of the 20-point plan was that the Hamas had to release all living and dead hostages. There's one hostage that remains. And this is very strategic because if they release the last hostage, then the next step of the ceasefire is that Hamas must disarm. So they're not releasing the body because they don't want to go into the next stage of the ceasefire. So what is going on in Gaza right now? Hamas is rearming. It is public assassinations of any collaborators they are thinking are collaborators with Israel. They're killing them, assassinating them on the streets. They're regaining. They're also recruiting new soldiers for Hamas. So it's literally rebuild mode for them. And I don't want to call this an absolute disaster for President Trump, but it is not good. We'll just put it that way. The good part was the hostages. Thank God for that. We do give thanks for that. But now it is an absolute disaster. Monies are flowing to Hamas again. Weaponry is being rebuilt. Everything that as it was before is coming back into place. And I know it's a notch in his belt that he got the hostages and, quote, had peace in Gaza. But there really is no peace. Yesterday, Prime Minister Netanyahu tried to open up the Rafah crossing on both ends, and his own cabinet voted against it. So I think that was a kind of a play for him. President Trump wanted that to happen. So he said, hey, I tried, knowing that his cabinet would disagree with it. So, or the 12, it's not all his cabinet. It's a security force, a group that meets. There's 12 of them. And they said no to that. So, I mean, his hands are tied. It looks like that way. So that's good standing for him when he comes before President Trump today in Mar-a-Lago down in Florida. So this is the big issue right here of what we're seeing in Israel as far as that's concerned. Now, so diplomatically, it's very important that President Trump hear from Prime Minister Netanyahu about this problem of Hamas growing in Gaza. We saw that Jared Kushner and Witkoff already have these plans of making Gaza an AI center and reestablishing, rebuilding everything, making resorts and all this. Well, okay, that's fine. You can say all that, but the fact is Hamas is still in charge. And that part of the ceasefire is that would end. And there is no path to making that happen right now. And partly Israel, this can benefit them because they don't want to leave either. They don't want to leave Gaza right now either. So this not releasing the last hostage is a real double-edged sword right now. So we really need to pray for clarity. Do this for me. Pray that President Trump have revelation that this deal is not going the way he thought it should go, or he was hoping it would go, and that there would be more strategy come into place onto how to deal with Hamas in that land. Okay, that's one issue that we want to talk about. The next one is Somaliland. And I know most of y'all, that's not been on your radar. It's not been on hardly anybody's radar. Somaliland. Let me pull up a map so you'll know what I'm talking about as far as where Somaliland is. Somalia is a nation, you know that, but it also is a land here. And I'm this is a close-up view here. If you look right here of this Djibouti, I guess that's how you say it. When we look at Somalia, it's right there in that area. And there's a little area, if you can see my cursor here, this area right here is called Somaliland. And this is not all part of Somalia. Let me pull out and see all of Somalia, because they all used to be one country, but then they declared their independence in 1991. So if you look at the larger map here of Somalia, you can see that it goes all the way down here. This is called the Horn of Africa, and it goes all the way down. Mogadishu is where Omar is from, the congresswoman from Minnesota. And that's also where we had in 1993, we called it Black Hawk Down. We have American soldiers' blood in the soil there. We were fighting the warlords in that area. in action, and we went down and we lost a lot of our soldiers there. So this is something that's very interesting. So this is Somaliland. Now, in 1991, they went independent, have their own currency. They're totally different. Well, they've never been recognized by any nation as being a nation independently. Well, Israel took the step of recognizing them as a nation. The first country to do it was Israel. Now, why would Israel do that? That's the question. They're a Muslim country, but they're open to Israel. They need help economically. They need help technology-wise, and Israel is that source. Now, let me pull out the map even a little bit more and give you more perspective of why this land is so important when we look at it. Now let's pull it out here a lot bigger. Okay, so down in the Somaliland, if you look at Yemen there, I hope you can see all what I'm talking about here. But when you look at Yemen here, you can see that right there. That's where the Houthis are shooting rockets toward Israel. Well, guess what? You're going to be right across the bay from them. Literally, the Gulf of Aden is called there. The Adriatic Sea is over to the right a little bit. And then you got the Red Sea there. So what we have here is Israel can then, if they want to, operate out of here with a friendship with Somaliland, and they can put in assets there so that when Yemen tries to shoot a rocket toward Israel, immediately Israel will know where it came from and can respond accordingly. Also, airspace. Think about this. Iran is over here. You now have, if they were to land here or put planes there, they could have free airspace in the Adriatic Sea. They will not have to cross over any Arabic land, any Muslim land whatsoever. They can come around the Adriatic Sea and goes directly at Iran and deal with that. And that's part of the reason Benjamin Netanyahu is in Florida right now, to talk about the ramping up of Iran and what they're doing in the land. Here's a report about that. Kind of gives you an update of what this meeting's about, and I think this will help you understand what is really going on in Florida right now.
The president's next round of peace talks related to a different region. Danielle Hamamdin is joining us. And Danielle, this is a key moment for the Middle East, right?
Yeah, Hallie, they're set to talk about Iran and the future of Gaza. The United States wants to push ahead with phase 2 of the ceasefire deal, which should see a further withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. Netanyahu is also preparing to make the case to Trump that Iran is once again expanding its ballistic missile program, posing a threat that could require another attack. That's according to a person with direct knowledge of the plans and 4 former U.S. officials briefed on those plans. Now, yesterday, the Iranian president says he considers his country in a full-scale war with the United States, Israel, and Europe.
So there we go. Kind of gives you an update what's going on there. What we're seeing is that Iran is ramping up. They launched satellites yesterday. They've been doing ballistic testing, missiles again, just flexing their muscles again. Most analysts believe Prime Minister Netanyahu is with Trump right now, asking for prepared action against Iran. So we may see another activation of that. That may be one of the next things we see. And then lastly, on the Israel piece, Israel is now yesterday or this weekend put in a device called the Iron Beam. And what that is, it's a technology that is a laser to shoot down incoming, whether it be drones or missiles or mortars or whatever. This is very interesting. Just let me give you a little technological insight into what this is, because you'll be amazed at what this does. And now they stationed it nationwide. This came out yesterday.
This is the Iron Beam, Israel's latest development of air defense. Co-developed by Elbit Systems and Rafael, the Iron Beam is a laser-based system built to destroy incoming missiles, rockets, mortars, UAVs, and aircrafts, so any aerial threat can be intercepted by the Iron Beam. The Iron Beam will join Israel's other aerial defense systems, the Iron Dome, the David Sling, and the Chetz. But what makes the Iron Beam stand out as the most effective air defense system? Each interceptor of the Iron Dome for short-range missiles and rockets is estimated to cost the IDF approximately $40,000 to $50,000 per interception. While the Chetz-3, which is geared to intercept missiles outside of Israel's atmosphere, is estimated to cost around $4 to $8 million US, this according to Globes. With Israel close to ending a second year of war against hostile neighbors, Israeli defense spendings have skyrocketed, significantly impacting Israel's economy. But now, with the newly functioning Iron Beam, each interception of the laser system will cost only a few dollars in energy, meaning not only are interception capabilities now significantly better, the IDF also saves tens of thousands of dollars per interception in the process. The Iron Beam
So there you get an idea of what is going to happen there with the Iron Beam. And they're also planning on building their own munitions. That's another plan. So what are we seeing? What are we saying and saying here? We're saying that Israel looks like it's moving into basically independence from America, from other countries that have been providing military support. I think it's prophetic. I think they're seeing prophetically, whether they understand that's prophecy or prophetic or not. The writings on the wall, anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiment that we've been trying to warn about on the pipeline report here, that we've been bringing up, it's evident that it is putting pressure on Israel to make sure that they can take care of themselves and not be dependent upon anybody else. I think that's, Zach, you can speak to that. I think that's where this is headed.
Yeah, and to that point of looking at where the state of the nation here is this satisfies the Iron Beam and the push for Israel to become independent and have their own homegrown arms satisfies both sides in the sense of you're seeing this growing sentiment of people, let's be America first, let's stop giving so much money to Israel. Okay, this is possibly a way to do it. And to the Iron Beam point, to kind of dive in here, the cost, they talked about a few dollars to do this. What the Jerusalem Post is saying, it's as cheap as turning on a light.
Yep.
Versus millions of dollars in shekels for part of the Arrow interceptor systems, and then tens of thousands of dollars for the Iron Dome interceptors that we help fund. And this goes back years, as far as Israel trying to be independent. In 1987, they tried to build their first planes by gathering intel from sneaking it out through France and doing a whole bunch of things to try to protect themselves. And it kind of got shot down from the United States and other allies. So Israel's tried this before. The question is, and the prayer point for us is, will this administration and its allies allow them to do this, or will certain people in accord with the Abraham Accords, pun intended, shut this down for quote unquote peace in the Middle East? The new strategy for President Trump is peace through strength, and I think for Israel this applies as well. Is they need to be able to be strong in order for there to be peace in the Middle East, for them to defend themselves. And this Iron Beam is a step in the direction. And the interesting thing, here's two caveats about this: is one, you have nations like Iran, China, Russia, North Korea, etc., who are all trying to develop this technology, but none have gotten out of, this is per the Jerusalem Post reporting, none have gotten out of the testing stage.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So the fact that Israel, as of October 2024, has used it within combat and now going to use it at mass scale throughout all its military operations and battlefields in all its fronts, north, south, east, and west, this is huge. And this is the bigger caveat. The second point is the United States has a right and has a legal agreement with Israel to share intel on this type of intel. And the reason that this is important is for all those people who are complaining about AIPAC and funding for Israel and this and that and the other. This is why it benefits us.
That's right.
Because when Israel comes up with technology like this, we get first dibs, and we get the only dibs to share with Israel on using this when we so desire. And then on top of that is we get to have all the data that they gather by using it on the battlefield. And this doesn't go just for the Iron Dome. This doesn't just go for the Iron Beam. This goes for the fighter jets that we give them, that they do some testing with and run some scenarios live with the drones, with all this technology. They're battlefield testing it because we're not necessarily in the type of wars that they're in, but we get all that data, we get all that training. This is why you have allies. This is why it's beneficial to share intel, to be in these type of relationships with Israel specifically, but then also with other nations who have kind of a strength in this. But then on the flip side, for Israel, this is great for them. There is let me share this. There is an Israeli Times article that talks about this, where they are in the precipice of, oh, I am sharing it already. They're in the precipice of developing and investing over $100 billion in homegrown arms production, Netanyahu reveals. And this is over the next 10 years that they're going to try to move towards this. Now, the reason bring this up and we talk about this is President Trump and this administration and future administrations are still going to have to trade the actual materials that it takes for them to be able to make this. Isn't just, oh, they're going to be able to do it and they can source it all within country. There's a lot that they can, but they're still going to have to outsource the actual base materials to produce a lot of this stuff. So they're still going to need some allies and friendships and supply routes to be able to pull this off. And it doesn't mean everything, because I was reading one report earlier this morning that talked about how they're still going to have allies like the United States, France, et cetera, to be able to do the big fighter jets and a lot of other things. And I don't want to go down that route. But the reality is the reason Israel wants to do this is to prevent a October 7th scenario from happening. And in all these wars that you're seeing them get into, is they're not able to finish off and protect themselves because, the ideas of what you're seeing here with Witkoff and Jared coming in and saying, well, you need to stop doing this because this possibly might ruin, quote unquote, peace in the Middle East. And Israel knows, Netanyahu knows, and they've kind of kowtowed to it. And the people within Israel are kind of upset at this, to a point, and have been for some time, because if you would have, quote unquote, finished this a long time ago, this would have never happened, is what people within Israel are saying. So there's a real dynamic here where you have those close to President Trump who are saying and doing one thing, and then you have those who are close to Netanyahu and in country in Israel who want something different. And the reality is President Trump going, what side is he going to side on? Is he going to side on, trying to have his, quote, peace of the Middle East and play God? Or is he going to take a step back, let the nations figure out? And he said this as much when he first came into this administration, of letting each nation figure out kind of where they lie. And so now he's going to be put to the test on those remarks.
So obviously we've given you a lot of stuff to pray about, especially today as President Trump is meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. The clarity that the Prime Minister needs to have with him, pray for his focus, especially on the Gaza issue. Now we have a side issue, and Zach brought it up. Jared Kushner's his son-in-law, and he has major input with the president, and he has an agenda that is much larger than President Trump's is in Israel. His agenda is very clear: a two-state solution, that Israel get out of Gaza completely, that they become autonomous with the Palestinian Authority, whatever these security forces that they want to bring in, which Israel's not going to allow. Turkey wants to be a part of that. Nonetheless, that's what they want to do, and Jared Kushner is all for that. So we have to understand, we have two things that we need to understand. Remember in the election 2020, when we had the prophetic word, Jeremiah Johnson gave us the word, which he had the dream, which is there was a rat in the White House. Now we know that's Fauci now, but this is similar to that. I'm not calling him a rat. I'm just saying you have some similar force in the White House that is bending policy concerning this issue. And here's the problem for us on the Pipeline Report and as ministers, Christians. This policy is anti-biblical. It's against the word of God. It's against covenant. I can't forgive because he's Jewish. He has an ideology, thinks this will solve peace. I mean, bring peace to the Middle East, bring peace to Israel. He believes that. And because he does, he pushes that agenda. This is huge, and we've got to stay on the wall on this issue.
And one thing to note, in full clarity with him, is that a lot of his partners, since leaving the Trump administration the first time, he has a lot of real estate partners who are based in the Middle East. And that has a lot to say about his motive in a lot of this. And it's not something that you can say is independent of him operating and how he's operating here and being influenced. So he has some outside influences as well. And this is kind of the strategy of those nations who are trying to fund people like Jared Kushner, because they've done this in Europe, and you've seen how that's played out in Europe, and they're trying to do it in the United States. And it not only goes from real estate, it goes to colleges. They've been doing it for decades. Now they're starting to get into the sports and entertainment world with gambling and betting and a whole host of other things. And so it's starting to make its way now to the White House. And this is kind of what we want to pray about and pray there an exposure for, that this stuff will kind of come to the forefront and for President Trump, because he has, for those who are his blood and or related to who are his blood, he has a soft spot.
Yep, he does.
And this is one of those things that we got to pray that there are people around him, whether it be JD Vance, Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio was involved in this. Marco Rubio is the one, I mean, to me, you got to pray that has a stronger voice here over JD Vance, because he understands more than anybody else, I think, even more than President Trump, the significance of national security and the security of the United States and even Israel, but more importantly, of the United States, of how things will actually play out. And we don't, we're only hearing small bits and pieces of the reports of what actually happened. Marco Rubio was in the room. And so that's one I think we really need to pray for it to have that voice here in this season.
Side note on Marco Rubio, I saw a poll that came out this weekend. He is the most popular politician in America. A Democrat, Republican, above all. He's more popular than JD Vance. He's more popular than Trump, and et cetera. So his voice is resonating in the nation. So what he just said there is very important. We pray for him, because may God use his influence. And he is a believer. He's confessed his salvation, his faith in Christ. He is a key person, the Secretary of State, obviously, next to the president, that can have that voice of reason. May he have strategy to begin to, when he hears what Jared does and others do, that he has strategy on how to give better counsel. I was reading this morning the scripture where Adonijah was going to claim himself to be king, and Bathsheba and Nathan the prophet said, well, Solomon was supposed to, and they went into the king and they said, did you not say, this king, that Solomon would be this? Well, we're hearing that this other, he's saying he's king. And David did the right thing. He anointed Solomon, and he stopped that treason that was going on in the king's castle. I mean, king's kingdom. And so I think this could be a similar thing, that Rubio would be a Nathan here, that he would go in and say, hey, this is what you said you wanted to do. This is what we're supposed to be doing here. Let's make sure we stay the course with that. I think that's something that we need to really watch for in the midst of all that's going on in the land there. Okay, we're going to pivot here. We want to move to domestic issues, the Minnesota fraud, which is blowing up, huge. Zach's got some stuff he'll share about this as you watch this Somalia thing, and it's very interesting. Somaliland, Somalia there. Our Black Hawk Down, Somalia. Omar is from Somalia, and now the fraud with Somalia. So there's something about that. I try to research in the Bible if that land was ever in the Bible. It's not listed in the Bible. It was a land of gold. It was a land of resources. And this was very interesting. And so Egypt would have been bringing resources from there and so forth in the Bible times. So it did have some of that. And right now, if we want to say this, the love of money is the root of all evil. And we're seeing the envy, the greed, everything, every evil thing is present because of that. Even in Gaza, what Zach was saying there very much about real estate. This is a landmine, a gold mine for real estate agents, because they're going to have to rebuild. They're going to have to rebuild Gaza, the Gaza Strip. Remember, after Civil War, more millionaires were made in America than any other time in its history. Because why? Reconstruction. You had to rebuild the nation. You had to build structures. You had to do properties and things like that. So right now, the real estate moguls, the builders, all the suppliers, they're drooling at the opportunity to rebuild Gaza, because there's going to be multi billions of dollars made with that. So the root there, anybody has a love of money, that evil is present. And if we look at the money in Somalia, look, Tim Waltz in Minnesota, he brags about the wealth of Minnesota, not mentioning that the wealth came mainly from the federal dollars that we sent that have now been defrauded in Minnesota. So this is a big issue spiritually. It goes way beyond the fraud. And now the report come up, the investigator, the journalist that uncovered some basic things. I'll let Zach take it from here. This is very, very important stuff.
So this weekend, a reporter by the name of Nick Shirley became to have a relationship with a gentleman who has been investigating this issue that's going on in Minnesota and seeing some things with the Somali community. And what we're seeing is he's putting out his reports. And so I want to show what he's found and kind of play a little bit of what he has recorded when he's interacted with these child care facilities, because it is pretty alarming and something that I think we need to see firsthand. Now, there's 42 minutes of this, but we're only going to show the first couple minutes, and there's another video we'll show to kind of explain further the realities of this situation. But this is just quite alarming, because this is happening within Representative Ilhan Omar's own district.
No volume. There's no volume, Zach. Let me pop in here, Zach. There's no volume on that. We're seeing the video, but we're not hearing the volume. So we could start that over. That will help us. I think this is a very important topic because of what's going on here.
Let me get it up on a different channel.
Okay.
This is what happens when you do things live. Let's see here.
And it's amazing. One thing while he's pulling that up.
Hello, we'd like to ask.
There we go. There we go. Okay, go ahead.
You're hearing it?
Yeah, I heard it then.
Okay.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going. What do you guys think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
I don't think anybody is enabling fraud to happen.
Hold Governor Walz accountable for this.
What was this money spent on? 1.26 million. What was that money spent on? There aren't any kids.
Answer the question. Are there children? There's no children inside this building.
Potentially the largest fraud scandal in U.S. history is taking place in Minnesota, as literally billions of dollars have been funneled through Somali-ran fraudulent businesses. So much fraud, it could actually almost replace the entire GDP of Somalia. These fraudsters have worked hand in hand with the Minnesota government as they enabled billions of dollars to be given to fraudulent businesses underneath welfare purposes. Some of this money eventually landed in the hands of terrorist groups in Somalia like the Al-Shabaab, and others enriched themselves all at the US taxpayers' expense. And in this video we will break down all of the fraud from start to finish, from going to the fraudulent businesses and confronting the people who are making millions of dollars from the government. And we will also be confronting the incompetent government leaders who let this fraud happen. And to make this happen, I met up with a man who's been doing his own investigation for years now, as he has seen the fraud firsthand. His name is David. Let's get into this and be.
So this is a great analysis and a great investigation and an exposing firsthand what actually has been taking place in Minnesota. And the sad thing is that these are things that if the money were to go to the right places could actually help people. But in reality is we're not seeing that take place. This money is being funneled through. And you were talking about it before, is it's still going on. And your mic's off, but
yes, that's right. It's still happening. The money, y'all need to hear that. The money is still flowing. The SBA, the Small Business Association, is the only one that has said it's gone. They're holding up the funding. So these agencies, NGOs, whatever you want to call them, are still being funded by federal dollars. This is what we got to pray. We got exposure now. So when we look at prophetic, when you get exposure, we have to follow it all the way out. We can't, oh, good, they got it. They found out. No, we have to stop it. And we are required for justice reasons. And then I think he said that in the report. This is one day's investigation. He found $110 billion of fraud in one day.
Well, the guy's been doing it for years, but
yeah, the other guy has, yes,
yeah. But it's being exposed, and the biggest thing about that is now, surprisingly, the FBI is now on the ball, going to be looking at this, and this goes back weeks ago. There's also not only this, there's the PPP loans and a lot of the different things there throughout the entire country through COVID that they're going back and looking at, and they're saying something similar to this happened in California to this mass scale. I heard one report that said it was the one in California is 17 times larger than what we're seeing here. And so this is only 2-3 cases or 2 to 3 programs that we know that are being looked at as possible fraud, waste, and abuse. And it was funny, if you watch part of the video, the lady in the brown jacket there talks about, well, there's fraud here, and it's happening with Medicaid, and who's running Medicaid right now, or Medicare, and it's President Trump, so it's President Trump's fault. And it's like, well, okay, hold on, he inherited that from the president before him, and so it's something that needs to be looked at. And look, there are bad actors, there are good actors, there are even some who would claim to be Republicans and some who would claim to be Democrats. That it doesn't matter, their affiliation background needs to be looked at. And I think hopefully the FBI and everybody can get involved in this and actually look at this. There's actually part of the New York Post report here that talks about this that we'll put in the pipeline group, where the FBI has gone in. And this is actually a good video here that you're going to play.
Yeah, this is he was on Fox News. The reporter gives a little update.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I have to give props to the man by the name of David who helped me in this investigation. He's been doing research for years trying to expose this fraud, and nobody has given him the time of day to even talk about this. So with his help and my own investigation, I've known about the fraud taking place for a long time. Minnesotans have been telling me for a long time about the Somali fraud that is taking place. And with his help, we were able to crack over $110 million in fraud in one day. And that's just the tip. When people say it's the tip of the iceberg, it really is, because there's billions of fraud inside of the state of Minnesota right now.
Nick, kind of on that topic, you said that, I believe you just said his name was David, has been researching this for years. In your experience, or in your opinion, just spending the day you spent out there tracking this down, is there any way that this hasn't reached the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz? I mean, take aside ongoing litigation or what have you, but is there any way that he could claim ignorance on this, just in your experience over this investigation?
Oh, it's so obvious. If you're living in Minnesota, you have to raise your eyebrows and think, what's going on? Literally, if you drive around Minnesota, around Minneapolis, you'll see daycare centers, autism centers. You will then see transportation companies that have snow piled up as if they haven't moved in months. And then you also go into buildings where there'll be 20 healthcare companies, 14 and 22, the video that I published on X and YouTube. So it is like a kindergartner could figure out that there's fraud going on.
And it's a great interview. You can go watch it. It's on Fox News when it talks about the whole thing. But one of the things he talked about was this transportation issue. People all around, especially Minneapolis, kept noticing these vans with a Somali driver with nobody in the van ever. And so there was an investigation into that as well. And part of the loophole here is the funding for this autism and for all these childcare. They needed transportation. And so the Somalis were getting money for these vans, just putting a little tag on it, something transportation, but they never take anybody anywhere. That becomes their personal vehicle and they just drive it around all the time. That's kind of what they're doing. 81% of all Somalians in Minnesota are on government subsidy. 81%. And he goes in their report, it's the largest, possibly the largest fraud in American history. This is huge, and we need this uncovered. This guy was a candidate for vice president. Tim Walz was. This is a major explosive moment. The left is not even reporting this, so don't now CNN, all them, they're not even talking about this. So this is where their side is totally in ignorance on this issue, and they don't even know it's a real problem. And so we've got to pray for mainstream revelation so that God can expose this. And this is thievery, this is stealing, this is injustice. It's not helping these Somali people anyway. They're just becoming tools to bring funding to Minnesota. So Tim Walz, when he says they're prospering, and his answer was, well, we're prospering, so it does bring in thieves and frauds because they want to be a part of that. Well, you're prospering because you're stealing American money. And this is our representation. We are now funding it as Americans. So that's my take on that. We need to pray accordingly.
Yeah, and for these news organizations, the old school mainstream news media is, in a prophetic sense, is they're like watchmen on the wall who need to kind of call this stuff out. And if they're not calling it out, there's going to be a repercussion of that from the users and people who would read them, but then also spiritually as well. But then also on this story specifically is old mainstream news media like the New York Times actually was the one to kind of burst this bubble and put this mainstream. So that's a really good sign that they're kind of coming to their senses as they're getting rid of some of the fraud, waste, and abuse within even in their own journalistic standards. And they're coming back to more reporting the news and being that watchman on the wall in a natural sense of calling this stuff out. So this is a positive in this case. Hopefully they can continue to do that more. And they're kind of being pushed to do this because the landscape of the media is changing. I mean, obviously, more people are having a voice now, able to call this out. This guy, Nick Shirley, is a YouTuber, and he's going out there and doing investigations, and there's ways for him to make a living doing this. I mean, it's incredible that this stuff can be done. But the reality is the American people, as we come to the midterm elections, and even for those in those districts, look, Ilhan Omar is up for re-election. Will they continue to put her back in office? This will be up for those within her district to decide. But hopefully, if there is enough people who kind of would stand up against it, that they're able to get their vote and push forward and push through there. So we want to end on this note of calling these things forward. This year has been a super fast pace compared to the last 4 years. Of being at a real slow ad nauseum pace, and even the old school mainstream news media is saying that, look, we have to work. Now they're complaining about that, and it's been a tremendous honor to be on here, pray with you guys, be with you guys throughout this year. I know I'll let you close here, but it's one of those things where we're seeing momentum shift back towards freedom. Just say that. And that's the whole purpose of what we're trying to do here, is for there allowed to be freedom so that these ideas and these things can be discussed, that we can pray about, that it's not one person's agenda over another person's agenda. It's let meritocracy play its way out and let the cream rise to the top, so that we can uphold the foundations that are here within America, which is to allow for freedom and more purposefully as believers for the gospel of the kingdom to be spread not only in this nation but to the rest of the nations. So I'll end with that.
And we say thank you for following us here in 2025 on the Pipeline Report with Zach and Eric, our producer, and the guests we had on here as well. And we just feel led to inform. I realize that we've been doing this for quite a few years now. We did it. I don't think hardly anybody was doing it, but now it's become really mainstream. I know Mario Murillo and other ministries are doing this now because I think we see the importance of letting our people know what is truth and what is not truth the best we can find it, and to vet this stuff, not be taken in. I think Jacob said it on his Friday live stream. I think Denzel Washington made a quote. He says you need to check out the news so you're informed, but when you do check out the news, you'll become misinformed. And I think that's a truth that we need to have an understanding that there is so much misinformation, and that's what we're trying to do is navigate through that and help you discern what is truth and what is misinformation. And yesterday, Roger in our service, one of our elders got up and said that 2026 will be a year of truth, and that we will seek out truth and have understanding. And that's what we're going to try to do on this platform. So when we start next week, 2026 will be in. Our focus will turn toward the midterms. We'll try to each week cover a certain amount of states. Probably next Monday, we'll just kind of give you an analyze the 50 states and what's at stake here, the most important key states that are going to play a role. I know my friend Clay Nash, the Lord has given him some dreams, and say Arizona is going to be one of the critical states that's going to determine the 28 election for presidency, but also the midterms. So we want to make sure we cover those and have you well informed, especially those of you watch from other states, how to pray for your state, how to pray accordingly. Remember, all 435 state congressional reps are up for re-election. So we got 435 elections just in the House, and then we have a certain amount in the Senate. And Pelosi came out yesterday and said they fully believe that they will regain the House. That's well within the realm of possibility, well within that. And so we got to pray accordingly that this would be what God wants, that there be still another 2 more years to get this agenda the Lord's trying to bring in our nation, the very thing that Zach just said there. So thanks for following us. I just want to bless you for 2025. Thank you. Some of you watch every week. You comment. We pay attention to that. We take note of that. We pray for you. We thank you for being a watchman on the wall, praying with us. And thanks for being a partner with us here on the Pipeline Report. God bless you. We'll see you next year, 2026.